The thunder was so loud that Dongwoo Kim felt it in his bones. He stood on his front porch watching the purple lightning dance across the dark sky above his ranch. The storm had been building all day, and now it was ready to break over New Sejong like an angry beast. "Dad, the cattle are getting scared," his daughter So Young called from inside the house. She was 16 and helped him run the ranch when she wasn't studying for school. "Should we bring them into the barn?" Dongwoo shook his head. "They'll be fine in the south pasture. The lightning won't reach them there." He had been a rancher for 15 years now, ever since he left his old life behind. He knew how storms worked on this planet. The first drops of rain hit his face just as the brightest flash of lightning he had ever seen lit up the northern sky. It wasn't purple like the others. This one was white and blue, and it seemed to tear the very air apart. The thunder that followed was different too. It didn't rumble and fade. It was sharp and sudden, like something big hitting the ground very hard. "What was that?" So Young asked, coming to stand beside him. Her dark eyes were wide with worry. Before Dongwoo could answer, old Tae-ho came running from the barn. The 70-year-old ranch hand moved faster than Dongwoo had seen him move in years. "Boss, something crashed in the north pasture." "I saw it fall from the sky." Dongwoo grabbed his coat and his tool bag. "You two stay here," he told So Young and Tae-ho. "I'll go check it out, but Dad..." "No," he said firmly. "If it's a ship crash, there might be radiation or dangerous chemicals. I know how to handle that stuff." He didn't tell them about his past, about the years he spent designing ships for the military. They thought he had always been just a simple rancher. The rain was coming down hard now as Dongwoo climbed into his old hover truck. The vehicle lifted off the ground with a quiet hum and carried him across the grassland toward the north pasture. The headlights cut through the darkness, showing him the familiar landscape of his ranch. He had bought this land because it was far from everything, a place where a man could live in peace. As he got closer to the crash site, he could see a strange glow coming from behind a hill. It wasn't the orange glow of fire. This light was blue and white, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. When he drove over the hill, he stopped the truck and stared. The thing that had crashed was huge. It looked like a ship, but not like any ship he had ever seen. Instead of metal, it seemed to be made of crystal that glowed from within. The crystal was cracked and broken in many places, and some pieces were scattered across the grass. The ship was about the size of his barn, and it had carved a deep furrow in the earth when it hit. But that wasn't the strangest part. Under the twisted wreckage of what must have been the ship's wing, something was moving. Something big. Dongwoo got out of his truck slowly, keeping his hands where they could be seen. His military training told him to be careful, but his rancher's heart told him that whatever was trapped under there was hurt and scared. He walked closer, his boots splashing in the muddy grass. The blue light got brighter, and he could hear a sound like heavy breathing. Then he saw it clearly for the first time, and his breath caught in his throat. It was a dragon, not the small lizards that some planets had, but a real dragon like the ones in old Earth stories. It was as long as 3 cattle put together, with scales that glowed soft blue in the darkness. Its head was wedged under a piece of the broken ship, and one of its wings was pinned by a heavy crystal beam. The dragon's eyes opened when it heard him coming. They were golden and ancient and filled with pain. The dragon tried to lift its head, but the wreckage held it down. It made a sound that was part growl and part whimper. Dongwoo could see that it was hurt badly. There was blue blood flowing from cuts on its scales, and its breathing was shallow and quick. "Easy there," Dongwoo said softly, the same way he talked to frightened cattle. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon's golden eyes focused on him. There was intelligence there and fear and something that might have been hope. It tried to speak, but only a weak hiss came out. Dongwoo looked at the wreckage pinning the dragon down. The crystal beam was heavy, but he had tools in his truck that might work. He had lifted heavier things when fixing farm equipment. The dragon watched him as he went back to get his portable lift and some metal cables. "This is going to hurt a little," he told the dragon as he set up the equipment, "but I'll get you out of there." He worked carefully, using the lift to raise the crystal beam just enough to pull the dragon's wing free. The creature cried out when its wing moved, but it didn't try to bite him or burn him with fire. It seemed to understand that he was trying to help. When the wing was free, Dongwoo moved to the piece of ship that held the dragon's head down. This one was trickier. He had to dig away some of the mud and rocks first, then use 2 lifts working together to raise it up. The moment the dragon's head was free, it took a deep breath and looked right at him. Then to his surprise it spoke. Its voice was like distant thunder, deep and powerful but very weak. "Why?" the dragon asked in perfect human language. "Why do you help me?" Dongwu wiped the rain from his eyes and looked at the magnificent creature. "Because you're hurt," he said simply, "and I don't leave hurt things to suffer alone." The dragon stared at him for a long moment. Then its golden eyes closed and it fell unconscious in the mud and rain. Dongwu spent the rest of the night in the rain, treating the dragon's wounds as best he could. He used the same medicines he kept for his cattle, cleaning the cuts and wrapping the worst ones with bandages. The dragon stayed unconscious, which was probably better. Some of the injuries looked very painful. When the sun came up, So Young and Taeho found him sitting beside the sleeping dragon, sharing his thermos of coffee with the strange creature. He had been dripping warm coffee into the dragon's mouth every few minutes, and it seemed to help. "Holy stars," Taeho whispered when he saw the dragon. "Is that really what I think it is?" "It's hurt," Dongwu said simply. "Help me get it to the barn. We can't leave it out here in the open." It took all three of them and both hover trucks to move the dragon. The creature was heavy, much heavier than it looked, but they managed to get it into the big barn, where Dongwu kept his equipment during the winter. They made a bed of hay and old blankets, and the dragon slept on. "Dad," So Young said quietly, "people are going to come looking for this. Ship crashes always bring government people." She was right. By noon, a military hover car was flying low over the ranch. Dongwu watched it from his kitchen window as it circled the crash site, then headed toward his house. He took a deep breath and went out to meet them. The officer who got out of the car was young, maybe 30 years old. He had captain's bars on his uniform and the kind of serious face that came from too much responsibility. "I'm Captain Woojin Park," he said. "We detected a crash on your property last night. We need to investigate." "There was a crash," Dongwu agreed, "but I already checked it out. Just some space junk. Nothing dangerous." Captain Park looked toward the barn, then back at Dongwu. "Sir, our sensors show the crash site contained unusual energy signatures. We need to examine the wreckage." "This is my land," Dongwu said calmly. "I have salvage rights to anything that crashes here. The wreckage is mine now." The captain's jaw tightened. "Mr. Kim, if there are alien technologies involved, this becomes a matter of planetary security." Dongwu almost smiled. If only the captain knew what was really sleeping in his barn. "I understand your concern, Captain, but I've looked at everything. It's just broken crystal and metal, nothing that would interest the military." Before Captain Park could argue more, another vehicle arrived. This one was white with government markings. A woman in a lab coat got out carrying scientific equipment. She was Dr. Nari Lee, and she looked very excited. "Captain Park," she called. "The energy readings are stronger now. Whatever crashed here, it's still active." Dongwu kept his face calm, but inside he was worried. The dragon had woken up that morning and was now conscious in the barn. Of course it would give off energy readings. "Mr. Kim," Dr. Lee said, walking up to him with a big smile. "I'm Dr. Lee from the Xenobiology Department. This is so exciting. We haven't had a real alien contact in years. Where is the crash site?" "I'm sorry, Doctor, but Mr. Kim claims salvage rights," Captain Park said. "He won't let us examine the wreckage." Dr. Lee's smile faded. "But this could be the discovery of the century. Sir, you don't understand how important this is." "I understand plenty," Dongwu said. "I also understand property law. This is my ranch, and I decide who comes on it." The argument went on for an hour. More government people arrived, including some very serious men in black clothes who didn't give their names. They all wanted to search his property, and they all had official papers that said they could. But Dongwu had dealt with government bureaucrats before, back in his military days. He knew how to use paperwork against them. He demanded to see warrants. He quoted salvage law. He insisted on calling his lawyer. Every time they thought they had him cornered, he found another legal reason to make them wait. Finally, they gave up for the day. But Captain Park warned him that they would be back with proper search warrants tomorrow. After they left, Dongwu went to the barn. The dragon was awake, lying on its bed of hay with its golden eyes alert. It had heard everything. "They want to take me away," the dragon said. Its voice was stronger now. "They want to study me like an animal." "Not while you're on my land," Dongwu replied. He sat down on a hay bale near the dragon's head. "What's your name?" "Heijin," the dragon said after a moment. I am called He Jin of the Silver Flame Clan, and you are Dongwoo Kim, the human who saved my life. Just Dongwoo, he said. The human part doesn't matter much out here. He Jin's large head tilted slightly. It matters to my people. We were taught that humans are young and wild and dangerous, that you cannot be trusted. What do you think now? The dragon was quiet for a long time. I think, she said finally, that I was taught many things that might not be true. So Young came into the barn then, carrying a bucket of warm water and some clean rags. She had been helping take care of He Jin all day, and she wasn't afraid of the dragon at all. How are you feeling? So Young asked He Jin, checking the bandages on her wing. Better, He Jin replied. Your father and you have been very kind. I am not used to kindness from strangers. You're not a stranger anymore, So Young said simply. You're a guest in our home. He Jin's golden eyes went wide. A guest? But I am not human. I'm not even from this part of space, so? So Young shrugged. Dad always says that good people are good people no matter where they come from. That evening, while He Jin slept, So Young brought her school books to the barn. She read aloud from her history texts, telling the dragon about human civilization and how people had spread across the galaxy. He Jin listened carefully, asking questions that showed she was very intelligent. Your people fought many wars, He Jin observed. Yes, So Young admitted, but we also learned from them. Dad always says that the best humans are the ones who choose to be better than their past. Late that night, when So Young had gone to bed, Dongwoo sat with He Jin in the quiet barn. The dragon was thinking hard about something he could tell. I must tell you something, He Jin said finally. I was not just traveling when I crashed. I was on a mission for my people. We wanted to know how far human technology has advanced. Dongwoo nodded slowly. And what were you supposed to do with that information? Report back to the Confederation. Help them decide if humans are a threat that needs to be stopped. And now? He Jin looked at him with those ancient golden eyes. Now I do not know what to think. You could have left me to die. You could have sold me to your government for money. Instead, you brought me into your home and treated me like family. She paused, then asked the question that had been bothering her all day. Why, Dongwoo? Why did you really save me? Dongwoo thought about his answer for a moment. Because a long time ago I was lost and hurt too. Someone helped me when they didn't have to. I guess I'm just passing it forward. He Jin closed her eyes. I think, she said softly, that my people have been very wrong about humans. 3 days later, Captain Park came back with more people and official papers. This time he had Admiral Kyung-ho Choi with him, a man with silver hair and cold eyes who spoke like he was used to being obeyed. Mr. Kim, the Admiral said, I'm going to be direct with you. We know you're hiding something. Our deep scans show massive energy signatures coming from your barn. We also know that no human technology could produce those readings. Dongwoo stood on his porch, arms crossed. I told you already. It's just crash debris. Then you won't mind if we take a look, Admiral Choi said. It wasn't really a question. Actually, I do mind. This is my property. The Admiral's face grew hard. Mr. Kim, I have a court order here that gives us the right to search your entire ranch. You can cooperate or we can arrest you for obstruction. Behind the Admiral, Dongwoo could see soldiers getting out of military vehicles. They had weapons and scanning equipment. These weren't the polite investigators from before. These were serious people who would not take no for an answer. Just then, another vehicle arrived. Dongwoo's brother Myung-soo got out, wearing an expensive suit and looking worried. He worked for one of the big mining companies and had connections in the government. Dongwoo, Myung-soo said quickly. I came as soon as I heard. Whatever you're hiding, it's not worth going to prison for. I'm not hiding anything illegal, Dongwoo replied. Admiral Choi studied the two brothers. Mr. Kim, your background check came back interesting. It says you were a cattle rancher before you bought this land, but there's no record of you before 15 years ago. That's unusual. Dongwoo felt his stomach tighten. He had hoped his old identity would stay buried forever. Who were you before you became a rancher? The Admiral asked. Before Dongwoo could answer, the barn doors opened. He Jin came out slowly, her massive form moving carefully on legs that were still healing. The soldiers raised their weapons, but the Admiral held up a hand to stop them. A dragon, Admiral Choi whispered. A real dragon. He Jin looked at all the humans pointing guns at her, then at Dongwoo. I am tired of hiding, she said in her deep voice, and I will not let them threaten my friend. The Admiral stepped forward, his eyes bright with excitement. Magnificent. Do you know how long we've been trying to make contact with your kind? Long enough to develop some very interesting weapons, I imagine. He-Jin replied coolly. We are not your enemies, Admiral Choi said. We want to establish diplomatic relations. Your confederation and our colonies could benefit from trade and cooperation. He-Jin laughed, a sound like distant thunder. You speak of cooperation while your soldiers point weapons at me. This is not how my people begin friendships. Dongwu could see the situation getting worse. The Admiral wanted He-Jin for political reasons. The soldiers were nervous around a creature they had only heard about in stories. And his brother looked like he was going to pass out from shock. Admiral, Dongwu said, I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you who I really am, and I'll let you talk to He-Jin, but only if you send most of your soldiers away and promise that no one will be hurt or arrested. Admiral Choi considered this. Agreed, but I want the truth, Mr. Kim, all of it. Dongwu nodded. My real name is Commander Kim Dongwu, former head of Advanced Propulsion Research for the Colonial Defense Force. I designed most of the FTL drive systems your ships use today. The Admiral's eyes went wide. Commander Kim, but you died in a transport accident 15 years ago. Your memorial is in the Hall of Heroes. I arranged that, Dongwu said quietly. I needed to disappear. I was tired of building weapons. Myung-soo stared at his brother. You were Commander Kim, the genius who revolutionized space travel? And you never told me? I told you I was a simple rancher, Dongwu replied. And I am. That other life is over. But Admiral Choi wasn't satisfied. If you're really Commander Kim, then prove it. Show me something only he would know. Dongwu looked at He-Jin, then at his brother, then at all the government people who had invaded his peaceful ranch. He had hoped this day would never come, but maybe it was time to stop running from his past. Follow me, he said. He led them to his barn, past where He-Jin had been sleeping, to a door hidden behind stacks of hay bales. Behind the door was a workshop that looked like it belonged on a starship, not on a cattle ranch. There were computers, design stations, and parts that clearly didn't come from any farm equipment. In the center of the workshop was something that made Admiral Choi gasp out loud. It was a prototype FTL drive, but unlike anything the military had, this one was smaller, more elegant, and according to the readouts, it was at least 50% more efficient than current designs. This is impossible, Admiral Choi whispered. Our best engineer said this level of efficiency couldn't be achieved for another century. Your best engineers don't have access to the rare minerals under my ranch, Dongwu said. He gestured to containers filled with glowing crystals. I've been mining and refining them for years. They make much better drive cores than anything we used before. He-Jin was staring at the workshop with her mouth open. Her golden eyes were huge with shock. This technology, she said slowly, it's more advanced than what my people use. What? Admiral Choi spun to face her. That's impossible. Dragon technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. No, He-Jin said, and her voice was small and uncertain. No, it is not. What Dongwu has built here, it would be considered a miracle by the Confederation. We have been stagnant for centuries while you humans have been racing ahead. The workshop fell silent. Everyone was trying to understand what this meant. Admiral Choi recovered first. Commander Kim, this changes everything. With this technology, we could explore the entire galaxy. We could build ships that travel faster than anything ever imagined. Or you could build weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. Dongwu said quietly, That's why I left the military. That's why I've been hiding out here. He walked over to a shelf and picked up a data pad covered with calculations. This drive design could be weaponized easily. You could accelerate asteroids to near light speed and use them as planet killers. You could build warships that move so fast no defense could stop them. He-Jin was shaking her head slowly. My people sent me to spy on human technology. They wanted to know if you were becoming a threat. She looked at Dongwu with something like fear in her golden eyes. But you are already far beyond what they imagined possible. Admiral Choi stepped closer to the prototype drive. Commander, your duty is to humanity. This technology could secure our place in the galaxy forever. My duty, Dongwu said firmly, is to make sure this technology is never used to hurt anyone, human or dragon or anyone else. He-Jin suddenly sat down heavily on the workshop floor. I do not know what to do, she said, and for the first time she sounded lost and frightened. Everything I believed about humans and dragons, it was all wrong. I came here thinking I was spying on primitive creatures. Instead, I find that you could destroy my people if you wanted to." She looked at Dongwu with desperate eyes. "What am I supposed to tell the Confederation? How do I explain that the humans we thought were harmless children have become the most dangerous species in the galaxy?" The next few days were the hardest of Hai Jin's long life. She had lived for 847 years, but she had never faced a choice like this one. In her damaged ship's communication room, she stared at the quantum transmitter that could reach across the galaxy to her home. Dongwu had helped her repair it, using parts from his workshop. He hadn't asked what she planned to do with it. He hadn't tried to stop her or spy on her. He just fixed it because she asked him to, the same way he had saved her life that first night. That trust made her choice even harder. On the screen in front of her was the face of Elder Yu Jin of the Silver Flame, her mentor and the dragon who had raised her after her parents died in the border wars. His ancient eyes were worried as he listened to her report. "You are certain of what you saw?" Elder Yu Jin asked. "Human technology that surpasses our own." "More than certain," Hai Jin replied. "Elder, they have achieved things we thought impossible. Their FTL drives are not just faster than ours, they are completely different. Better. And the human who built them, he could have kept the secret forever. Instead, he showed it to me freely." Elder Yu Jin was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Hai Jin could see other elders gathering. The council was being called into emergency session. "Hai Jin," her mentor said finally, "you must return immediately. Bring this human and his technology with you. The council must see these things for themselves." "I cannot do that, Elder." "What do you mean you cannot? You are a scout of the Confederation. Your duty is clear." Hai Jin looked away from the screen. "Dongwu Kim saved my life when he could have let me die. He treated my wounds when he could have sold me to his government. He and his family have shown me kindness I never expected to find among aliens." "Hai Jin," Elder Yu Jin's voice was sharp now. "You forget yourself. These humans are not your friends. They are a potential threat to every dragon in the galaxy." "Are they?" Hai Jin asked. "Dongwu Kim had this technology for 15 years. He could have given it to his military. He could have built weapons that would make dragons extinct. Instead, he chose to become a cattle rancher and live in peace." On the screen, she could see other elders whispering urgently to each other. Elder Yu Jin's expression grew more troubled. "You have been among aliens too long," he said. "You are beginning to think like them instead of like a dragon. Come home, Hai Jin. Come home before you lose yourself completely." The transmission ended, leaving Hai Jin alone in the dim communication room. She put her head down on her front legs and closed her eyes. She felt lost between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. While Hai Jin struggled with her choice, Dongwu was dealing with his own problems. More government people had arrived at the ranch. They had set up a camp near the crash site and were studying every piece of debris from Hai Jin's ship. Worse, they had brought Colonel Yunwu Seo with them. Colonel Seo was from military intelligence, and he was very interested in Dongwu's workshop. Unlike Admiral Choi, who saw the technology as a tool for exploration, Colonel Seo saw it as a weapon. He had been asking very detailed questions about how the drive worked and how quickly it could be mass-produced. "Commander Kim," Colonel Seo said that afternoon, finding Dongwu in his workshop, "I've been reviewing your old files. You resigned from the military right after the Centauri incident. That was when the rebels used civilian ships as weapons." Dongwu didn't look up from the component he was examining. "I remember. You blamed yourself for that attack. You thought your drive technology made it possible. It did make it possible." Colonel Seo stepped closer. "But imagine if our military had this new drive system. We could respond to threats before they developed. We could protect every human colony in the galaxy. Or we could start wars with species that never threatened us." Dongwu replied. "Power like this doesn't make people safer, Colonel. It just makes them more dangerous." The argument was interrupted by shouting from outside. Dongwu and Colonel Seo rushed out to see old Taeho standing in front of the barn with a hunting rifle in his hands. Behind him were a dozen other local ranchers, all armed and looking very determined. "What's going on here?" Colonel Seo demanded. "We're protecting our neighbors," Taeho said simply. "Dongwu and his family have been good to all of us. We won't let you government people hurt them or their dragon friend." Captain Park appeared from the direction of the military camp. "Sir, they've been arriving all morning. Word has spread through the local community about what's happening here. Colonel Seo looked angry. This is a matter of planetary security. These civilians have no authority here. This is our valley, said Mrs. Binayun, who owned the ranch next door. We've been living here for 20 years. We know who belongs and who doesn't. The standoff might have continued all day, but Hai Jin came out of her ship and walked slowly toward the group of humans. The ranchers parted to let her through, though some of them looked nervous. Dragons were still very much a legend to most people. There is something you all need to know, Hai Jin said in her deep voice. I have been in contact with my people. They are coming. Admiral Choi pushed through the crowd. Coming? What do you mean, coming? A fleet of Confederation ships will arrive in this system within 10 days, Hai Jin said. The Council has decided that human technology has advanced too far. They plan to either control it or destroy it. The news hit everyone like a physical blow. A dragon fleet coming to human space could mean war on a scale no one had ever imagined. How many ships? Colonel Seo asked. 50 of the line plus support vessels, Hai Jin replied. Enough to overwhelm your colonial defenses. Admiral Choi was already activating his communication device. I need to contact fleet headquarters immediately. Wait, Dongwu said. Hai Jin, did you tell them about my technology? Hai Jin looked at him with those ancient golden eyes. I told them that humans had advanced beyond their expectations. I did not tell them how far you had advanced. But they will learn soon enough when their scouts arrive. So we have 10 days, Dongwu said quietly. 10 days for what? So Young asked. She had come out to see what all the noise was about. Dongwu looked at his daughter, then at Hai Jin, then at all the government officials and local ranchers who were depending on him for answers. For 15 years he had run away from the consequences of his genius. But there was nowhere left to run. 10 days to find a solution that doesn't end with a war, he said. Hai Jin sat down in the grass, her massive form somehow managing to look small and vulnerable. I still do not know what to tell them when they arrive, she said. I am supposed to be their scout, their eyes and ears among humans. But how can I report about people who have become my friends? Colonel Seo stepped forward. You could tell them the truth, that humans are peaceful and less threatened. Are you? Hai Jin asked, looking at all the soldiers and weapons around her. Your government wants to use Dongwu's technology for war. Your admiral speaks of securing humanity's place in the galaxy. How is that different from what my people fear? It was a question none of them could easily answer. As the sun set over the ranch, everyone stood in uncomfortable silence, realizing that the next 10 days would decide the fate of 2 species, and no one knew how to prevent a war that seemed inevitable. The dragon fleet arrived exactly when Hai Jin said it would. 50 massive ships appeared at the edge of the new Sejong system, their crystal hulls glowing like new stars in the darkness. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, each one larger than the biggest human warship. On his ranch, Dongwu stood beside Hai Jin and watched the ships through a telescope. The human fleet was there too, smaller but ready to fight if necessary. Admiral Choi had called in every available ship and reinforcements were still arriving from other systems. It's not too late, Dongwu said quietly. You could still contact them. Tell them you've learned something that changes everything. Hai Jin shook her great head. What would I tell them? That humans are not the threat we thought they were. They would demand proof. They would want to see your technology for themselves. Then maybe it's time to show them. They had spent the last 10 days preparing for this moment. Dongwu had worked around the clock, building something he had never thought he would build again. It sat in his workshop now, covered by a tarp, waiting. So Young came running from the house. Dad, Admiral Choi is on the radio. The dragon fleet is asking to talk to their scout. Hai Jin sighed, a sound like wind through mountains. I suppose I cannot avoid this any longer. The communication took place in Dongwu's barn, with representatives from both fleets watching on screens. Elder Yujin appeared first, his ancient face grave with concern. Behind him, Hai Jin could see the other members of the council. Hai Jin of the Silver Flame, Elder Yujin said formally. You will report the status of your mission. Hai Jin looked at Dongwu, then at So Young and Taeho, then at all the humans who had become her friends. Finally, she looked back at the screen. Honored Elder, she said, I must report that everything we believed about humans was wrong. Explain. They are not the primitive, aggressive species we thought. Yes, they have advanced far in technology, but they have also advanced in wisdom. The human who saved my life could have used his knowledge to build weapons that would destroy us all. Instead, he chose to become a farmer and live in peace. Elder Yujin's expression didn't change. One human's choice does not speak for their entire species. Then let me show you something, Dongwu said, stepping into view of the camera. Elder Yujin, my name is Kim Dongwu. I am the human who developed the technology your people fear. He gestured for the camera to follow him as he walked to his workshop. With careful hands, he pulled away the tarp that covered his latest creation. What lay beneath made everyone in the barn gasp. It was a drive core, but not like the prototype he had shown before. This one was different. Instead of the human crystals he had been using, it incorporated pieces of Heijin's ship. Human technology and dragon technology, working together to create something neither species could have built alone. This drive system, Dongwu said, is twice as efficient as anything either of our peoples has ever created. It could revolutionize space travel for everyone, but I built it for a different reason. He activated the device. On the screens, both human and dragon sensors registered energy readings unlike anything they had ever seen. I built it to show that our two species are stronger together than apart, Dongwu continued. Heijin taught me about dragon crystal engineering. I showed her human quantum field manipulation. Together we created something impossible. Elder Yujin leaned forward. You would share this technology with us? I would share it with everyone, Dongwu replied. But only if it's used for peace. Only if both our peoples agree to work together instead of fighting each other. Admiral Choi spoke up from his position on the human fleet. Commander Kim, you can't give away humanity's greatest technological advantage. I'm not giving it away, Dongwu said. I'm creating a future where neither side needs advantages over the other. On the Dragon Fleet, other voices were arguing in the background. Heijin could hear them debating whether this was a trick, whether humans could be trusted, whether the risk was too great. Elder, Heijin said, her voice cutting through the arguments. I have lived among these humans for 2 weeks. I have seen how they treat strangers, how they protect the weak, how they choose cooperation over conflict. If we attack them, we will be the monsters our children read about in stories. Elder Yujin was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What do you propose? Dongwu looked at Heijin, then back at the screen. An exchange. Scientists and engineers from both species working together. A joint research station where we can learn from each other, and a promise that all technology developed together will be used only for peaceful purposes. And if one side breaks this promise? Elder Yujin asked. Then the other side stops sharing, Dongwu said simply. Trust has to be earned on both sides. The negotiations took 3 more days. There were arguments, threats, and moments when it seemed like war was still inevitable. But in the end, both sides decided that the potential benefits outweighed the risks. The agreement was signed on Dongwu's ranch, with Heijin serving as the official dragon ambassador and Dongwu as the human technical advisor. Captain Park was promoted to colonel and put in charge of the new Joint Security Force. Dr. Nari Lee became the head of the Joint Research Program. 6 months later, the ranch looked very different. Where there had once been empty pasture, there were now buildings designed for both human and dragon occupants. The Joint Research Station was still small, but it was growing every month as more scientists from both species arrived to work together. So Young had enrolled in the first interspecies education program, learning dragon history and crystal engineering alongside human mathematics and physics. She was one of 12 students in the program, 6 humans and 6 young dragons who were the first of their kinds to grow up together. Taeho complained constantly about all the changes, but Dongwu noticed that he had learned enough dragon language to have conversations with the younger dragons who worked on the ranch. The old man would never admit it, but he enjoyed having new people to tell his stories to. As for Heijin, she had found a purpose she never expected. As the first dragon ambassador to human space, she spent her time traveling between worlds, helping other dragons and humans learn to work together. But she always came back to the ranch, which had become her true home. One evening, as the purple sun set over New Sejong, Dongwu and Heijin sat together on the hill overlooking the research station. Below them, human and dragon scientists worked side by side in laboratories that glowed with the light of shared discovery. Do you ever regret it? Dongwu asked. Choosing to stay here instead of going back to your people? Heijin considered the question. I did not choose to stay here instead of going back, she said finally. I chose to make here a place where both my peoples could belong. A young dragon named Hyunsu flew overhead, carrying a human engineer named Jin-A to inspect the new communications array they were building together. The sight would have been impossible just a year ago, but now it was becoming normal. What happens next? Dongwu asked. Heijin smiled, something she had learned to do from watching humans. I still do not know, she said. But for the first time in my very long life, not knowing feels like an adventure instead of a problem. In the distance, So Young was teaching a group of young dragons how to play baseball, using a modified ball that wouldn't burn up when hit by claws instead of a bat. Their laughter carried on the evening wind, the sound of two species learning to be friends. Dongwu leaned back against Haijin's warm side and watched the stars appear in the darkening sky. Some of those stars now had ships traveling between them, carrying people and ideas and hope from one world to another. Dragons and humans were exploring the galaxy together, finding wonders that neither could have discovered alone. It wasn't the future anyone had planned for, but it was better than the one they had feared. And sometimes, Dongwu thought, that was the best any species could hope for. The chance to choose something better than what they had always done before. Heijin was right. Not knowing what came next felt like the beginning of something wonderful instead of the end of something safe. And that, more than any technology or treaty, was the real gift they had given each other, the gift of possibility.